Alright, YouTube, so we're back. We're talking about some Final Fantasy VII, I guess in this case, Rebirth, but we're also discussing First Soldier. What? What the hell? We're discussing a dead game? How is that possible? So what happens is we got the roadmap for the last few months of the game, right? And there's a couple of upcoming events, and we got a promotional image for one of the events that just has the community buzzing, apparently. So I figured we'd talk about it. So let's just cut the bullshit and get right into it. It's this image right here. You're seeing a face-off between Zack and Cloud when it comes to this upcoming First Soldier event. And the event's actually called Cloud versus Zack. That's actually how they titled it. So anyways, you get this intense stare down between these two characters, right? Cloud and Zack. The guy that Cloud thinks he is in FF7, right? And even Remake, I suppose. Best friends, Zack died for Cloud, etc., etc. And I've already seen theories running rampant. And as I'm recording right now, this image isn't even 24 hours old yet. And there's already just a plethora of theories out there. And we're definitely going to talk about these different ideas out there, right? We talk about this from all the different angles when it comes to, the Remake trilogy and all, the overall story and stuff like that, right? We have a conversation. We don't have just one mindset here. That being said, however, I do want to start the video with, I don't know how much this image matters. It's a promotional image for an upcoming event of a dying game. And while the mode is definitely called Cloud versus Zack, it's just that you as the player can turn into one of those characters by finding the Buster Sword on the map. So it's not like this actual story thing about Cloud and Zack fighting, right? Which is what kind of people are thinking. And that's kind of the main thing, and the main point right here is that story, lore, narrative, none of that can really be derived from First Soldier. We've been told that by the devs themselves, and what little story we're going to get is about these three characters, and that's only going to come from Ever Crisis, if that game ever comes out, and if we still get that chapter. And I personally think that that's one of the biggest missteps when it comes to First Soldiers, because if you look at other battle royales, there is story and narrative. It's not much, but usually with each update, there's a new cutscene, right? And they kind of progress the story. With Fortnite, it's always changing the map and destroying the map and all this other shit, and Warzone has a similar thing going for it. That's something they missed with First Soldier, I think, is if there was a bit of a story to it that would keep people intrigued, maybe the game would still be going. But the point is, there's not much story to be had when it comes to First Soldier, right? Because they've had all kinds of events over the last year or so, right? They've had an Easter egg event and a Halloween event and stuff. Are we trying to derive some sort of lore narrative from that? Probably not, right? So I don't know how much we can from this. And one of the other reasons why I'm not sure that it matters is people are trying to give it a lore purpose, right? But First Soldier's set 30 years in the past, right? We're talking 10 years before Cloud's even born. He's only 21 in FF7. This is set 30 years in the past. He's not even a thought in his dad's ballsack yet. These characters aren't even alive. So unless people out there are ready to admit that time travel is a possibility when it comes to the Remake story, it doesn't make sense that they're here, right? It's 30 years in the past. They are from the future, right? It's also a simulation, so none of it's real anyways. Actually, that's something I need to mention too, because I've seen people breaking down this image and the digital effect on these characters is to insinuate that they're from a different timeline or et cetera, whatever the case. But it's a simulation. It's all digital. None of it's real. If we're talking in-universe, these are people fighting in a simulation, right? That's the digital effect. That's all it is. And we're all about breaking down and looking at the tiny details when it comes to Remake and stuff, right? But that's all that is, right? It's a VR simulation. VR is a big part of FF7. If you look at Crisis Core, you look at Remake, and now First Soldier. So there's nothing more to it than that. Now, moving on from whether or not this shit matters, we're being told by the devs, essentially, that there is no story for First Soldier, right? There's no narrative to be drawn from it when it comes to, Remake and Beyond and all that other stuff. But that's what we're being told. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Also, Nomura is one of, the directors that is working on First Soldier. So I find it hard to believe they wouldn't throw some stuff in that's going to matter. And this could be one of them. It's actually been a kind of popular theory for a while that there would be some sort of, collision between Cloud and Zack, right? It kind of goes back to the evil Cloud theory that we talked about relatively recently. But one of the ideas is that during that moment, usually it's theorized at the North Crater, whenever Cloud kind of gets manipulated or controlled or whatever, that Zack would be present for that, and that, Zack might kind of fill in as a pseudo Cloud for us, because we wouldn't have Cloud on the party anymore, and that, Zack and Cloud would essentially fight. And that's what this promotional image and event seems to be kind of teasing, right? You're seeing a face-off between Cloud and Zack. The event's literally called Cloud versus Zack. So it's possible that could just be an event, some fan service in the game to have Cloud and Zack fighting, but it could also be a little bit of foreshadowing for what's to come. But here's the thing, when it comes to the evil Cloud theory, again, I did a whole video on that shit. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it entirely. There's a basis for Cloud, people point this out in the comments, there's a basis for Cloud being, aggressive when it comes to Remake, right? He tries to kill Reno, tries to kill Johnny, et cetera, and all that other stuff, right? So he seems like a more angry Cloud, we'll say. And the reason for why I kind of disagree with it is I just don't think Cloud's going to be the broken Cloud in North Crater like he was in the original FF7. I've been saying this for a long time now, for 2.5, almost 3 years at this point. The Cloud's going to learn the truth of what happened in Nibelheim between him and Sephiroth and Zack and everybody. All that shit. He's going to learn that sooner. And we already got proof of that, right? We already had teases of it in Remake. And the very first thing we ever got for Rebirth is Cloud saying Zack's name. Presumably what seems like Nibelheim, which is long before North Crater, which is where everything this is going to happen. But Cloud learning the truth of what happened in Nibelheim is what fixes his broken mind. So why would he be manipulated at North Crater? It just doesn't make sense. Like, the people who disagree with me on that video aren't addressing that conversation. I don't know why people that are massive fans of FF7 aren't making a bigger deal out of Cloud saying Zack's name. Like, that, to me, is like one of the biggest things ever. It's one of the biggest changes ever. It's a massive fucking thing compared to what we've seen in like OG FF7 and Remake for Cloud to know who Zack is. And I just don't know why the community doesn't really talk about it seems. But even in that video, I agree that the manipulation factor is a possibility, right? That happens in OG FF7, so it's more likely going to come up within Rebirth and stuff like that. So it's possible that he could be controlled by Jenova or Sephiroth or something, whatever, and attack our party. I addressed that in the video, but people still just want to disagree. But putting aside my thoughts on this, it has been a popular theory for a while that there would be some sort of a fight between Cloud and Zack, and then lo and behold, with First Soldier, we're getting some sort of event that seems to be teasing that, right? It could just be fan service. It could just be for fun, just so you can run around the map and fight as Zack and Cloud and fight against each other as Zack and Cloud, etc., etc. That could be all it is, and there's nothing more to it. But it just so happens to coincide with some fan theories out there. Another theory that I've seen, I believe is on Twitter, that I've seen people joking about, but I think it honestly is plausible and makes a lot of sense, is like the struggle for the timelines. Essentially, we have the new timeline that our group created by defeating Whisper Harbinger within the Singularity, and then you have the old original timeline where things are supposed to happen the way they're supposed to happen, right? And then maybe this altered timeline is falling right into Sephiroth's plans. That's what he wanted. This may help him succeed in whatever his goals are when it comes to the Remake trilogy. And we already kind of get a hint of that he's manipulating our group anyways, because it's pretty clear by the end of Remake that he wanted us to defeat the Whisper Harbinger so he could absorb all those memories and all that other shit that he absorbed. And what if that's what Zack's journey is to get the timeline back to the way it's supposed to be? Because there's going to be some sort of ripple effect from us changing shit, right? It's on the table. It's theoretically possible that anybody could die, right? Even if they don't pull the trigger on it, Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, Red 13, people that didn't die in the original FF7 story, it's theoretically possible that they could die now. And even if they do die, that could hurt, it could suck, but if they change the timeline back to how it's supposed to be by the end of the story, those people would be back alive, so it wouldn't be permanent or anything. And I know Tifa fans don't like to hear it, but her death is definitely on the table, only because Sephiroth teased it. It could just be an idle threat, but with that VR simulation scene we got, he shows Cloud him killing Barrett and Tifa, right? Not Meteor killing them, him specifically killing them. And then later on in Remake, he does that. He stabs Barrett. Now, obviously, Barrett doesn't die from this, but he came through with that threat. So you got to think that he's at least gunning for Tifa when it comes to Rebirth and beyond, even if he doesn't succeed in it. And I think one of the most obvious things about that threat is that he's shown Cloud that, look, the Whisperers will save Barrett now, but in the future, if I want to kill one of your party members, they're not there to save him anymore. So they're going to die. But I personally love the idea of having to change it back to the OG timeline because, for one, that would appease the people that just don't like Remake because of the changes, because by the end of the Remake story, it would still be OG FF7. But also, it'd be a bittersweet ending, right? Because we're going to defeat the big bad guy, but we're going to change it back to how it used to be. And the characters that were supposed to die are going to have to die in order to get back to the OG timeline. Because we're shown at the end of Remake, and obviously it's out of context, we don't entirely know everything, but we're shown Big's living, it appears like Zack's alive, Jesse could also be alive, Wedge is possibly alive, and who knows who else, right? So there could be a lot of people that survive the Remake story that didn't live when it came to OG FF7, but by the end, they might still have to die. And I just personally like this idea, right? I think there's an interesting conflict there where you'd have two good guys, right? Two heroes, two protagonists in Cloud and Zack who are doing the right thing. They're trying to save everybody, trying to save the world, but they're just going about it by different means, and eventually it's going to have to come to a head. And whether it's manipulation or whatever the case, maybe Cloud and Zack have to fight each other eventually. And we talked about it recently in a video that it might not even have to be Cloud that gets manipulated, right? Maybe there's a way that Zack can be manipulated by the Jenova cells in his body, whether it's reunion that he wasn't a part of, or maybe witnessing something that actually finally breaks him mentally. Maybe him being present for Aerith's death. Maybe he gets broken to where he can be controlled or manipulated by Sephiroth or Jenova, whatever the case. Maybe Zack is the bad guy. Maybe Zack's the final fight of Rebirth or something. I'm not trying to go on like a tangent here or extend the length of this video any more than it needs to be, but there's already a precedent sort of like an OG FF7 timeline with like the different Midgards inside the Singularity, but also Zack having the wooden cross in his church at the end of the game, which obviously wasn't there for Remake. We've done plenty of discussions on that, but there is this, again, sort of precedent that there could be the OG FF7 timeline out there somewhere. But that's more or less the videos, my dudes. Ultimately, again, it's just a promotional image for an upcoming event for a dying battle royale. It could absolutely mean nothing. But as always, I could talk about it forever. We made this, it's just a fucking image for First Soldier, and it's a 10 plus minute video we did, right? We can talk about it all. I can talk about anything from every angle. It does not matter. But of course, we got to pass it off to you. Do you think it does matter? Do you think there is something here with this image, this event that they're doing in First Soldier? Is it foreshadowing some sort of a collision, some sort of conflict between Cloud and Zack? And what would that conflict be? But that is pretty much the video, my dudes. Social networks are in the description below. Follow me on Twitter at dashingdavidyt. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame, we blow that. Like Coltrane, we in here. Like Logain, or leave it. Like Cobain,